One, and I think we're on the air. So we'll say another welcome. Thank you all for jumping on board with us here, and to those who are listening afterwards, we're glad you're with you. This is Craig Altrock with Let's Start Talking, and I'm mostly moderating today, but we're talking about doing LST with your family. And so those on board with us here, Tim and Roy, have different aspects of that, and then those of you listening may be in various stages of doing LST with children or spouses or extended family or whatever. But that's the topic for this evening, is to talk about doing LST as a family. It's a special blessing, special challenges that come along with that. So Leslie Altrock and Casey Williams are our expert panel here, not just because they work at Let's Start Talking, but both have traveled with family, kiddos, spouses, extended family. So they have personal experience in many different stages of doing LST with family. And then, of course, they both help recruit church teams. And so they are coaching and training others who are doing this with spouses and kids and all that too, in various stages of life and various stages of experience before they go on LST. So they are bringing to us, their own experiences as well as the experiences of those that they train and coach. And then the rest of us can pipe in as we have advice or questions about these topics. But for the most part, this will be fairly informal. I'll introduce the topic and let Leslie and Casey sort of address that topic from their point of view. If there are questions or comments from the rest of us who are on board here tonight, we can chime in, but we'll go through those topics and then have some time for questions at the end. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen now, and you should see. There we go. So you should be able to see the slide now, LST best practices with your family. So I tried to include some slides here. People we know who are connected with LST and doing it with their family, just to keep in mind that we're talking about real people. We're not just theorizing here tonight with this topic. So here are the general topics we're going to cover here in the next, however long it takes us, but surely not more than 40 or 45 minutes. So maybe just touch briefly about why do it with your family. It's probably too late for you guys that are with us to decide not to do it with your family. So, but we might just encourage each other a little bit by addressing why do LST with your family, how to involve your children in the work. This is a question that people often have when they're taking their younger children with them, but even teenagers for that matter, is how do we involve our kiddos in the work that we're doing. So we can provide some thoughts there. Traveling with kids, there's always interesting ideas about traveling with kids, and every family is unique, but we can share some thoughts there. Working with your spouse, we should throw out some ideas there too, because that's always a little bit different going on a project that's intense with your spouse. For some, it's just like a honeymoon, but for the rest of us, it's a little more realistic and figuring out how to manage being together 24/7. And then maybe just a catch-all category there at the end, some special considerations. Again, sort of circling back to doing LST with kiddos, just what, if any, impact is there on our schedules and the commitments that we make as a family. Eating, that, is super practical. What do we do about family or team devotionals? And then things to do to keep it fun. Okay, so those are the things that we're going to touch on. So let's just dive into why do LST with your family. So Leslie and Casey, people coming up to you and you say, I don't know, I'm not sure if I should take my kids with me, if I should go with my spouse. Why do it? Why do it as a family?
Go ahead, Leslie.
Okay. Yeah, so we do hear this question a lot, and the thing that resonates with me especially at the stage I am where I'm launching my kids about to go to college, is one of the things as a parent I have been very concerned about is how do I empower my kids to know how to share their faith in an effective way? And how do I model that for them? And how do I get them involved and be able to do that? So LST has been the way we have chosen to do that in our family, is taking them on trips, letting them, when they were little, they did a lot more watching. And now that they are teenagers about to launch into college, they're able to be full participants with us. And so I'm thankful that they still want to go with us, that they feel like this, that they do, like I feel very confident as I launch my kids to their next stage, that they have some skills that they need to go into the world and to share Jesus with the people they're going to encounter. So for me, even from the time they were little bitty, I wanted them to have a visual image of their mom and dad sharing their faith. And I wanted them for that to be an active part of who we are.
Okay. Casey?
Yeah. No, that's perfect. My kids have been on a little bit like you guys. There have been projects where they've read when they were a little bit younger. Sometimes they didn't have readers, but they've been trained to read since they were 11. So they've done other mission projects as well. But LST is just something that even if they do other things, it's something that we come back around to, for the reasons that Leslie talked about.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think about too, that I really didn't recognize when the kids were little, but as I'm launching them, I see a big impact in their lives, is just what a global way they look at the world, that they are able to recognize what's different about America. They're able to see the blessings that we have. But like my older son was just saying tonight, that he feels like he can have more informed discussions, like in school or with his friends, about global things that he sees happening. He has a much different viewpoint. And so I do think it has opened the world to them as well, that they see when they encounter these same questions, they're encountering them not just from American perspective, but they have friends in other countries that they can think about how to invest and encounter the world with.
The other thing that I think is super valuable is with Let's Start Talking, you sit down with people almost immediately and just start talking about their lives. And that's a skill set that my kids don't really get in everyday life a whole lot. So I just think that they're learning some super valuable things that I don't know that I can replicate here. So.
Right. Yeah, and I'd just sort of add one thing there. I love the fact that our family has got to experience church in different models. We're at a pretty large church in Texas, sort of stereotypical large church in the Bible Belt, and lots of resources and lots of activity. And so I'm glad that we've sat in a living room with 6 other people in Hungary, and that's been church, or been with 15 Koreans in a small church building in the middle of a city, and that's church, and most of the people are older. I love the fact that they've experienced church in different ways, and it's all the same. It's all God's people just gathering together. So I appreciate that. All right. Well, so we can move past the cheerleading stage and get to some practical questions here. So one is just about involving kiddos in the work, involving the whole family in the work here. So for Tim and Lynn, this would apply to you guys and maybe some others who will listen later. But
how old are the Herbal's kids?
I have a 12-year-old son, and he has a 15-year-old daughter. She'll be 16 in July. So
great. Yeah. Those are great ages.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that because, like you were saying, Casey, teaching interactive skills
Yeah.
not something that we can do in our society very easily
Mhm.
without it feeling like a punishment to the kids because
Right.
of their cell phone access and all of that. And so this will be
Mhm.
a really great way to just say it's time to engage face to face with real people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm super excited about the age there. It's perfect for both of them.
Yeah, they'll be great. And Roy can correct me if I'm wrong. So Roy's going down to BA, and his wife's children work with the church there, right? There's her sons, Roy?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Both of them are married.
Uh-huh.
26 and 25. And actually, uh, I've been kind of waiting for the part of this tonight as far as the working with our wives too, because ladies is a Venezuelan, and so her boys. One of her boys is very fluent in English.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies is good, but it would be nice for her to have a chance to go through this, even though she is a faithful Christian woman. She knows what we're going to be reading, but it will give her a chance to learn English. And the boys, I feel like, at least the one that is fluent in English, will actually be a support to me as I talk to the people that come in to the church there.
Yeah.
Buenos Aires.
Yeah, so Roy's got a really interesting family dynamic that's going to be at work here. So yeah, as we talk, we'll see. We'll see if he can glean any nuggets from how that's going to work, because that's pretty unique. Yeah.
So when you talk about how to involve your children in the work, I think one of the things to think about is, I'm going to talk about kind of each stage, because I think each stage in a child's life, they participate in a different way. And so if you're taking young children that are more like toddlers, maybe 0 through 6-year-olds, they're not going to be able to participate the same way as teenagers can participate. And so if I'm taking young children at that age, some of the considerations we have to keep in mind is that, will both spouses be able to be full-time workers? They're going to need a little more supervision. They're going to need help with the, with keeping themselves entertained. And so you have to address, okay, how long can my child entertain themselves, and how much supervision will each person need? And so those will be some things that you have to consider with that age group. But they can still participate. We would tell our children, even at that young of an age, that mommy and daddy are sharing their faith with a new friend, and their job is to allow us to do that. And so maybe they allow us to do that by entertaining themselves, or if there's other children, they can participate in that way. We also ask them to maybe pray for a reader, or pick a reader that they would like to maybe sit with us. It all depends on the maturity level of the child and how long their attention span is. And one year we even had one of our kids, each year when our kids got about 5, they wanted to be a reader. So we let them sign up and have a session with us. And that was a way of, participating with them. Then if you want to talk, did you want to share anything else about that age group?
No, because I was not awesome like you guys and took my children when they were that age. Thank you very much. No.
Well, at that stage, I always said that it was one of the hardest things I did all year, but one of the most important things we did.
Definitely.
So it definitely was not the easy thing to do. It'd been easier to leave them with grandparents, but I think it was important. It can be an important time in their development.
Well, I just want to say, a lot of times the church, the hosting church, has very few whole families intact.
Right.
Sometimes the mom is there, the dad is there, one of the kids is there. So sometimes it's encouraging for the local church to see a whole family with young kids.
Yeah.
Just just there, you know, and
Yeah.
trying to live life together and try to serve together.
And one of the missionaries said, I mean, we were glad we could provide this service for him, that he was grateful to watch a Christian family discipline in public. You know, they got to watch all the things happening because our kids definitely weren't perfect.
Yeah, but
We-
that guy was talking about the way you treated me. So
Yeah, and I've disciplined the teenagers in public. Sure, for sure.
Yeah, so that is, you know, how do you discipline in a Christian way? And that was part of it as well. So then our next stage would be probably the 5 to 10-year-olds. You know, they're getting more mature. They can entertain themselves. We always bring activities for them to do. We ask them to do some reading or something that keeps them busy. Of course, we bring a laptop, an iPad or something where they can sit and watch a video in the room next door or something. Then, but at the age of 5 to 10, we definitely would have them, if there were other kids that they could sit around and play Uno or play a game with, we would encourage for the parents of our readers, if they had children, to bring them and let the kids play together, practicing English words or practicing the words in the local language of the game they were playing. And then we would, you know, one year we had the kids each adopt a reader, and they sat down with us during the reading session. And, you know, we just had to explain to them that they couldn't dominate the discussion. They would have to participate with us. And so, like, we could ask a question and let them answer, and then let the reader answer. And it was a nice way to include them, and then they felt like they were part of the group. Also letting them participate in things like our family devotionals and helping with cooking and cleaning. We're always, especially that 5 to 10-year-olds, able to do.
for
And
shopping for groceries.
Right.
Mhm.
And so then you get to the teenage years, the 10 through 18, and then they can participate a lot more. That age group is interesting because I feel like that definitely what they do and how much they do has a strong impact on their maturity level, on their desire to participate with you, because you don't want to force them to do something that they absolutely are not ready to do. And so, you know, each of our children, we have gauged where they are and allowed them to participate at whatever level that they were wanting to participate in.
Mhm.
So some years that was them having readers with teenagers or young adults. Some years that's been, and maybe they'd have 2 or 3 readers, or, you know, when they get to be 16, 17, if they want, they can even do a full schedule as they want. And then some years that's been them helping in other ways.
Yeah, you know, I've found that every year there are usually 1 or 2 adults that prefer to read with my kids because they don't feel as intimidated with their English. And so we really empower the kids and try to explain to them that they are very valuable, because sometimes people feel more comfortable with them.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that it does draw in more teenagers. I mean, you know, the word kind of spreads that there's a teenager here, and maybe bring a friend. And so we find that, you know, we get more teenagers that come and read than probably we would have if it was just us, because we're not quite as fun as our kids are, you know. So the kids have read, all 3 of my kids have had to be prodded a little differently, maybe, to read. 2 of them were actually really excited about them. One of them, you know, was very reluctant until she got her first couple of readers. So I just think it's super valuable. I don't know how else they will get that kind of exposure here, like I mentioned. The other thing is, though, the parties that you do, the social events that you'll do on site. Even the 5 to 10-year-olds can really help with that. Your elementary school kids, but the teenagers, man, they like to plan it. All 3 of my kids have. They're great at parties. They're much more fun at the parties and social events than we are.
You guys have to meet our kids now, so sorry.
Oh,
Hey.
yay.
All right.
Grandma just came with some of the kids. We have this is David.
Hey,
Hi,
David.
David.
David is 12 and all boy.
Yeah.
Okay, good, good.
Tinges of blue hair. This is Paula. She is from
Hey, Paola.
Augsburg.
Hi.
Good to
Hey.
see you.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, you too.
And then Kinsey is in Dallas tonight there, so
Oh.
in Richardson. So
Nice, nice. Good.
Yeah, we're
Anyway.
glad you're here.
Well, there's one thing I was. Oh yeah, about any of you that may be having teenagers involved in actual reading activity. Probably they'll do it even more comfortably if they've got a pretty robust set of questions to use. So I think it's harder for teenagers to just go a little bit on the fly like sometimes adults do or people with experience. So it may help your teenagers or others if you can give them a pretty full set of questions to work from so that they're not having to think as much on the fly.
Yeah. And, I do sit pretty close to my kids when they're reading. And I've told them, if I actually, if it's possible, I try not to have readers when they have readers, if the schedule works, in case they need some help. And I make sure I tell the kids, if I jump in, it's not because you're doing a bad job. It's just maybe it was a really hard question or, and kind of prep them that way.
Yeah.
But I sit in with them sometimes too. Yeah.
So I think one thing I hear as we're talking about this is involving our kids in the project. Certainly, it has to do with the reading sessions and the parties. Those are real obvious parts of the work. But I find it helpful when I think even more holistically, where I'm thinking about what could we do as a family at the beginning of the day, or the end of the day, or which child should we take to go buy lunch, or what could they do? Could they order the milkshake at lunch, for the family, or could they go over to the ice cream place and get ice cream cones for the family, or, just sort of start thinking through the whole day, or just being watchful through the whole day and looking for ways for your kids to do things. Let them pay for the groceries or let them carry the grocery basket, just even little things like that make people feel like, I was part of life there while we were there, as well as part of the work. So, Good. Any other suggestions there before we move on?
Just one practical thing. It doesn't involve as much as the reading, but one of the things we have done is our kids save money all year to take with them on the project, and we usually will give them some amount to go with that. Then they're completely responsible for buying and watching their budget. So, they've learned a lot about exchange rates and about inflation, and they'll ask the question, well, is this place going to be a place that I have a lot of money or no money? And how much spending money does this amount of currency have? So it's really helped them be global thinkers in that way and understand about currencies and the world market and things like that. So, and then we didn't have to tell them yes or no with how to spend their money. We've allowed them to do that as they wanted. And so that's been a nice way too, just to involve, some learning things while you're on site.
Okay, let's just touch briefly on traveling with kids, because I think on the one hand, traveling with kids just means holding your breath and getting it done and getting off the airplane. It's just something you do. Once you're there, you just got to do it. But maybe you guys have some little tips on traveling with any age of kid here.
Mine, the only tips that I have, because mine have been, like I said, either 11 or teenagers is kind of our age range, is the biggest thing that we've learned to talk about beforehand is that we do things even if we don't feel like it. So being tired is not a reason that we act ugly or don't work, or you just learn that really quickly. 24 hours worth of travel will teach you that. So, but it's got to be something that we talk about beforehand. But the kids learn really quickly that just because we're tired on Monday morning after travel doesn't mean we sleep in. We have readers, by Wednesday or Thursday, pretty tired. But we talk about it beforehand and just decide where we do things when we don't feel like it sometimes.
What have you done, Casey, in terms of just helping make sure they don't go crazy on the plane ride?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, plane travel is so much easier than when you guys probably had your little ones because they've got movies for one
Right.
thing.
Right.
The biggest deal that I do, and it sounds like such a mom thing, though, is I make sure they eat okay. Just because 24, 38 hours, whatever you're traveling, by the time you show up on site and they're
Yeah.
tired and no food, it's bad.
Yeah.
For teenagers, even for us too. But I don't know. For me, the plane ride is not. It's not an
Yeah.
issue
Yeah.
quite as much. I don't know. Leslie probably has better kid tips for that. Little ones.
So, well, for little ones, Benadryl and Dramamine have been my best
LST
friend.
does not endorse drugging your children for travel. However,
There'll be some
There's-
fine print on this slide at this point for the
there's
recording.
allergies. There's allergies flying around that cabin. Yeah.
No, my kids are sleeping. It's great. So, I mean, now that they're older, we let them watch the movies and stuff, but they do know on the way over that if
Yeah.
they spend their whole time watching a movie and they don't sleep, that will have an impact on how they feel those first couple of days. And so we would encourage them to watch maybe one movie and then try to sleep. And now the kids ask for Dramamine to help them sleep. So, and I'm happy to provide. So, so that's one thing. I think just having making sure, like when we've traveled, some airlines have the in-seat entertainment, which is wonderful, but some don't. And so you can also use your portable devices and just recognizing, well, what would we need? We took a lot of books with us before. Now I could take it all probably on my tablet, but when we first went, we would have a whole suitcase of just things that were to entertain the kids when they were little. Now we don't have to do that so much. One thing we do that I think is nice is that we each have a suitcase, and it is our suitcase with no judgment on what we bring. And so we share a little bit of the LST books and stuff in each of the suitcases, but then if I want to bring extra shoes, I can bring extra shoes because it's my suitcase and I'm going to wheel it where I'm going. And the kids get to choose what they want to bring. I mean, we kind of will look at it and make sure they've covered the basic things, but for the most part, they've learned what is important to them and are able to totally pack without much intervention from us at this point. So that's really nice. And then each person has a backpack that they take and they can put the things in it that they want to do their backpack. So those have been ways of just letting, if somebody wants to bring a stuffed animal, that might not seem like the most important thing to me, but if they can fit it in their suitcase and it makes them happy, then why do I care if they're bringing it or not? So
yeah.
So that's been one way too of traveling with kids to make it easier for them.
Yeah. Well, and the travel is a really fun part of the adventure, going and coming. And so I think it's good just to take advantage of that and explore the airport or splurge for some kind of smoothie or, just enjoy that part of it, because it's a short part and it's a pretty unique part. I mean, every kid, regardless of the age, will always remembers being on those big airplanes and traveling across boundaries and all that. So we know for our kids it's a special thing, so we can enjoy it with them. All right, let's jump to this one, working with your spouse. So now we're kind of branching out a little bit away from just kiddos to being open and honest about working with our spouses. And as I said, I don't know anything other than it's just like a honeymoon. Right. So I don't really know why we're talking about it.
Well, since my husband's not on the call, we can talk honestly about that. Yeah.
But I've heard that sometimes it can be challenging. And again, I mean, every family that listens to this is very unique, and their marriage and the amount of time they spend together and all of that. So some people will find doing LST with their spouse just totally just like every other day, but others may find it a very different experience because they're together more or a little bit more stressed or things like that. So I'll let the panel here give the first shot at this. I don't have a lot to say about it, but I might add one or two things to it.
I think one thing is just recognizing that it is a different environment when you're together 24/7. Probably you're not together like that most of the time throughout the year. And so there is an adjustment period, and you're trying to, what is the routines? Who's leading in this area? It's really more of a group. We say we do 1A leadership. Well, that changes a little bit of the dynamic in the family as well. So I think it's a great joy when husbands can take off the time and be with their families, be with the kids. This has been a huge blessing in our family to all be together, but it hasn't been without its bumps. I mean, we get on each other's nerves. We have to take time outs to say, okay, I'm just going to go sit over here and read a book, and I would like no one to talk to me for a few minutes. And that's okay too, you know, being able to communicate those kinds of things. But it is a great joy to serve together. Craig and I have had every anniversary but one on an LST project, and I can't think of a better way that I would want to characterize our marriage as being able to say that we serve together. And so it is a great thing, but you do have to figure out, okay, how am I going to communicate? You know, how are we going to do this so that we all are having, you know, our needs are being met. We're, you know, not everyone, no one's feeling put out. Everybody's helping with everything. Actually, on the project, our kids are much bigger helpers, and we're a little more equal with some of the housework and stuff than even at home. So I kind of enjoy that side of things.
Yeah. Yeah. My experience here is going to be more limited than Leslie's. But so I usually have been taking my kids one at a time. My husband, he's an independent contractor, so he hasn't always been able to get away. So he'll stay with the other two while I go. But this last year, we all went as a family together, and 3 teenagers. And it was an interesting dynamic because there are things at home that he runs, but there are things on the project that I needed to run. And I needed to take the leadership on just a little bit, partly because I was on staff, but partly just because I had done it before. So I was thinking about Roy a little bit ago. You know, he's gonna when we're traveling with spouses, maybe when they're not working, and you guys, the herbals too, there will be times where you know, one of you will have to be doing something with the kids. You know, sometimes the kids need a break and don't need to be sitting in the church building all day while you're reading or wherever you're reading. And or, you know, so sometimes you're kind of giving responsibilities to each other in different ways. But if your spouse is not working and doing LST, or one of your kids is not reading, you do want to be sensitive to that and try to include them in other ways. But they also need to be your schedule needs to be very clear, and your time with your readers needs to be very clear and set aside. So I don't know, you know, I think couples actually do function very differently on site than they do in real life. That's kind of been my experience with sending couples and being a couple on site. I think it is quite a bit different. So I think the best advice we can give is to just kind of know that going in.
Yeah.
One of the things, I have one other thing and then you can talk. Okay. So one of the things that I really have enjoyed as well is here at home, it's pretty hard to do our family devotionals together. Mm-hmm. You know, we're going all different ways, finding time to sit down. And so it's been very nice during our project time to really, we just said from the beginning that was something we were going to do as a family while we were on project. So we start every morning off with a devotional. We start our and then we've even had our evening times where we ended in an evaluation time. So sometimes that feels, if you don't do that at home, might feel awkward. Mm-hmm. But because we say that's one of the expectations with LST, that's been something that has been easy for us to commit to and implement.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah, I was going to say sometimes with spouses, one, sometimes they're both really engaged before the project, like they're both really engaged in the training, really engaged in all the details, but not always. Sometimes it's one of the spouses that is really more engaged just because it takes too much time and effort for both to be fully engaged all the way through. So often one spouse is sort of taking the lead in the preparatory phase before the project actually starts. And then once they're on site, then both spouses are fully engaged. And so even that little switch there can take a little bit of time for both people to sort of level out and get on the same page with, okay, what is our schedule? And one spouse is like, well, I thought we talked about that already. And, you know, it's just that they haven't really had time yet to really fully talk through everything and get on the same page. Sometimes that happens either on the way there or once they land on site. And Roy, you know, in your situation, you're doing some preparation and training that maybe your wife isn't doing. And so there's some things about LST you may know that she doesn't know. And so usually once you get on site, those things start to even out a little bit because you're both there and you're both working and both engaging the project. But that's just another area where a little bit of patience is needed on both parts, both from both spouses. If you've been the one that's been really engaged, then be patient with your spouse who hasn't, because they are going to engage now that you're on site. And if you haven't been able to engage until you get on the airplane, just be patient with your spouse who, you know, is going 100 miles an hour, and you know, just be patient in the questions you're asking to get up to speed, because all that sort of evens out after a few days. But I do notice that sometimes those spouses can't be fully engaged until sometimes it's just at the airport or when you land at the project. I know for us that's happened sometimes where one of us is just like as soon as we land, then it's like, okay, now I'm all here and I'm all ready to go. So let's go. You know?
Yeah. That's worked very well for us. Craig plans our trip and I plan everybody else's trip. And then I engage as soon as we get there.
I have found too that if there are couples listening to this later that maybe haven't traveled much together or haven't traveled internationally together, we would tell you, like we would tell any teams that we put together, is travel affects everybody differently. And there has to be just so much more grace during your travel and your trip than really that you probably have here. It'd be nice if we were all, you know, awesome about that all the time. But so I just, you know, especially if you're with a whole family, now people are sleeping in strange beds and eating weird food and have jet lag. And you just need to be able to expect some maybe rough patches, but be okay with that. And that's just kind of how it goes. That's just how families function, and how spouses sometimes will argue maybe about things that they don't argue about at home. And that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And I think you add on top of that just that as a couple, you're making a lot more decisions about day-to-day things than you're having to at home. You know, like every meal is a decision almost, and transportation and just so many things. So for 2 or 3 weeks straight, you're just making so many decisions that you're not having to do at home. And that can create little friction points if you don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And Roy, with you having a wife who is a native Spanish speaker, I had sent the last several years, we've sent 2 couples that have, one has a wife from Chile and one has a wife from Uruguay. So they were able to have some readers. Maybe they did more beginning readers or offered some ESL classes to the people who needed that kind of help. They helped by helping with having meals available, and also by just greeting people as they came in. They were able to just really engage, being that hospitality type person, and then staying around in between groups, talking with people, engaging them, while the spouse that was the native English speaker would had more of the reading sessions. They were able to be that hospitable person, get tea and that kind of thing, and really make the atmosphere feel like a more of a welcoming place because they had just a little more time being a native Spanish speaker instead of a native English speaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've also had people. I had a couple that was about like you're talking about, Leslie, and there were some people that came in that didn't have high enough level English to read with our workbooks, and so his wife was happy just to sit down and talk with them, and talk in their language and have some informal Bible studies that the church kind of was already doing, and had talked with her about that. So that's kind of a site to site thing, but it actually can be really valuable.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you've already said. In fact, I have involved, and I want everyone to meet ladies. My wife
Hello.
Ladies.
is from Venezuela, as I've already said.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Hello, how are you? It's
Hi.
Very good. Very good.
All brother born in the beautiful mission.
We're glad you're able to go. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled that you get to be down there with your kids, and I mean, it's gonna be a great time for you guys. Yeah.
Yes, I am very happy because I will see my boys
Yeah.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
in Buenos Aires. They arrived in Argentina in August.
Oh yeah.
Here. I arrived here in July and married in August.
Okay.
Good.
So y'all had a lot of family changes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, we have.
For the glory of the Lord, my two boys are preachers.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Working in Argentina. Gabriel support a lot the Let's Start Talking with Osvaldo and Tom and Tomas. I don't know Tomas. I know Tomas. I know Osvaldo for video call.
Yes.
Yes, my boy talk in English very well.
Oh, good.
Great.
Good.
I hope Tomas include my boy for work with Roy in the travel, no?
Yeah.
We are very respect all this. The all role have Thomas for us is okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Good.
That's awesome.
Wonderful. Well,
I like it's possible. I don't know it's possible. Cassie, one opportunity, know my boy Gabriel.
well, let's jump to our last topic here. We'll probably just take 4 or 5 minutes on it because it's kind of a catch-all area here, but just sort of any other considerations of doing LST as a family or with kiddos here, and things that might be included are sort of scheduling issues and commitments that you make in terms of work or don't make, eating, or we've touched on family devotionals a little bit, or keeping it fun, because I think this is one of the things that we want to do. We want our especially kids. We want them to come back and feel like not that it was a vacation per se, but that they really enjoyed the whole event. And sometimes that means actually scheduling in something or some things that they would consider to be fun, even if the parents don't, but or that the whole family decides to do. So, any comments on any of those?
Yeah, so one of the things we've tried to do is, so for our kids, we've gone every summer with them. They are missing things that they would get to do at home had they stayed home. So we want to honor that commitment they've made. And so usually at the end of our project, we will plan something that's a little bigger and fun, if that's just taking an extra day and returning home on a Monday, so that we can go to the beach, go do, visit if there's a famous city close to us. Maybe, sometimes we had stopped through London when we were in Europe, or maybe when we were in Korea last year, Andrew had found a dinner cruise you could do. And it was a pricey, and it wouldn't be something we would normally do, but because it was something he wanted to do, we wanted to invest in that and do something to kind of celebrate the end of our project. And this is something that we have enjoyed doing. And so that's one of the things that, each site we would look. When we were in Hungary, we went to a cave. What was that? A swimming?
Yes, it was a cave bath. That was fun.
But it's not a bath, it's a swimming pool. Yeah. But, just doing things that are unique to that area, we would try to research and do that. Taking, like one year when we had smaller kids, we were reading in a mall. And I could not imagine the kids having to sit there all day at the mall. And so we chose to I would go in the morning and read. Craig would read in the afternoon. Then we were all together for 2 or 3 hours later that evening when there were more readers that wanted to read at the same time. And that way the kids got time with their dad, they got time with their mom, and then they knew that this 3-hour time period they were going to sit at a table and have to entertain themselves. So that was one way of just thinking through, okay, this environment is not exactly what I would choose for a family, but how can we do the best we can do? And, we would celebrate with ice cream and go into the park and things like that as well.
I've been surprised how much a daily ice cream run can lift everybody's spirits. It's a pretty inexpensive thing to do, but it really works well. I've found that really the hardest time with my teenagers has been when they have a couple of hours between readers and some downtime. And so they've learned, because we don't pay for international data plans when we go. They're learning to kind of sit and read or sit and do their lesson that they're going to do. And they've learned some good things there. The other thing, though, is that we definitely let them plan our weekends. The kids are very involved in that off day. And I actually think it's very important for them to be able to gather information about a city and pick things to do that aren't super touristy, things that are just that the local people do. So that's kind of, that's kind of their job, is to plan kind of our free day.
Yeah. Well, and so, a married couple can handle a certain work schedule that maybe a family can't handle. And so if you travel with kiddos as a family, we encourage you to give some thought to how that schedule works. Usually that just has to do with things like how late you go in the evening, or with younger children, we always stopped earlier in the evening than other LST people would do. But if we were traveling just as a couple, then we might work a different schedule. We might work a little bit later. We might take additional commitments. But even last summer with our teenage kiddos, there were 1 or 2 commitments that the church would have liked us to make on Sundays, and we just decided that we couldn't do it as a family. That we needed just a little more room to decompress. So we turned down some things because we were there as a family, which if we had been there as a married couple, we might have said yes to. Yeah.
I also would encourage people to, like Craig, I don't know how many people feel super free like you guys did to maybe turn down something that the church asked you to do.
Yeah.
So when you are traveling with a family, if you're uncomfortable with that, let Leslie and I know. But of course we go to church on Sundays, and there's usually a big dinner. A lot of places in the world afterward, and church lasts a long time, and we always do that. But it is okay sometimes to decompress and get ready for the work week. Absolutely.
And some of that does depend how busy you are. So when we were in Korea, we had readers, about 8 readers a day, every single, and we were really full. So we really did need a little more time to decompress in that environment. But there, like we're going to Belgium this summer, I don't anticipate our schedule to be that full. So I think we will have some downtime throughout the week as well, which would mean on Sunday we would probably be more capable of saying yes to a fuller day. If if we've had some downtime throughout the week. You know, it just kind of depends each place. But in Korea, we were extremely busy the whole time. So, you know, having the evening on Sunday night to prepare for the week was really important.
The other quick thing I would say about family devotionals is that this may be one of the times that I would encourage not just the dads or the boys to lead the devotionals. Definitely, kids, moms, your kids need to see you leading devotionals too. And that just doesn't happen a lot in my daily life. You know, my husband usually takes the role in spiritual things of that nature. So this is just a really good opportunity to get everybody in your family involved in the team devotionals.
Mm-hmm.
Good, good. Well, so we've touched on sort of the why to do it as a family, how to involve our kiddos in our work, a little bit about travel, working with our spouse, and then these other considerations here. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and end our session here and end the recording since we're recording it. And then let's follow up with each other afterwards and in the coming days. And we didn't answer every question or cover every topic, but hopefully we've put enough on the table to at least get us thinking some more, or simply encouraged to do what we already know that we're going to be able to do. So I'll lead us in a short prayer, and then thank you guys for joining us tonight, and thank you to those who are listening. And we're all doing this together, so we're glad to help in any way you can. Or if you come across great ideas that you want to share, shoot them to us, and we'll forward them on to everybody else. Okay, so let's just end in prayer. Thank you, God, for family, for spouses and children, and then the opportunities to travel, because for so many, just getting the opportunity to travel and serve internationally is a huge thing. And then to be able to do it with a spouse or a child or extended family is just an added blessing that in many ways is a rare thing. So we thank you for it. We thank you for the opportunities that we have to travel and serve with our family. We pray that we'll be patient with each other. And we pray that you would give us eyes to see and wisdom to use in finding ways to lead our family, to lead our spouses as we serve, to see those opportunities in front of us, to let them engage, to let them lead, to let them be used. Thank you for your church, your body worldwide, and for our part in your work. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you guys so much for being part of the webinar tonight, and we'll follow up with you. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Roy, we'll talk tomorrow.